So there is a very fundamental Kabbalistic work known as Shari Kedusha, the Gates of Holiness. It's written by Rabbi Chaim Vital, who we've met before. He's a student of the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, the great Kabbalist from Tzfat. Rabbi Chaim Vital spent 2 years as a student of the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, because that's the only 2 years that Rabbi Yitzchak Luria taught. And that completely transformed the Jewish world and the Kabbalistic world, those 2 years. All of the writings that we have of the Arizal, or at least most of them, the most authoritative ones, were written down by Rabbi Chaim Vital himself. So Rabbi Chaim Vital has a book of his own called Shari Kedusha, the Gates of Holiness, in which he writes that every single one of the character traits within the human personality has a source in our soul. Our soul is built out of 4 elements, just like everything in the world is built of 4 elements. And every one of our character traits is attributed to one of those elements. What are the 4 elements of creation? They are air, water, fire, and earth. They are the 4 elements. Air and water, fire and earth, they are the 4 elements that everything is made up of. Every physical reality and every spiritual reality, everything is made up of that in the created world. So a physical object has these 4 elements in it. It has its air, gaseous part. It has its earthly, solid part. There's some warmth in it, which is the fire. There is the liquidity or the moisture, which is the water. Everything in the world is made up of these 4 things in the physical world and also in the spiritual world. Spiritually and internally, there are 4 elements and everything's made of the 4 elements. So, our personality, each one of us, we have a bit of water in us, we have a bit of air, we have some earth and we have some fire. And if you look at our various character traits, you'll be able to trace each one to one of those 4. So you have some people who are watery people, some people who are fiery people, some people who are airy people, and some people who are earthy people. But all of us have all 4, and all of us can trace our various different traits to one of them. So, for example, the trait of laziness, it's one of our character traits that we may have. The trait of laziness comes from which of the 4 elements? Earth. Why? Doesn't move. It's inert. The earth is the most stagnant of the 4, the heaviest of all of them, and that's where our laziness comes from, our element of earth, of stagnation. Where does procrastination come from? The trait to push things off, to leave things till tomorrow, to not get around to things. Air. Why? Airy fairy, empty, light. So I'm not going to do it now. I'll get around to it. So you can have somebody who's very airy. You can have somebody who's very earthy. There are positive elements to those and there are negative elements to those. Somebody who is very practical, that's earthy, down to earth. Somebody who's very spiritual is airy, because air is the most spiritual and the least tangible of all the 4 elements. A very loving person. Fire or water? Why? Water gives life. Fire, why would it be fire?
What would it be? Fire gives warmth.
So, a loving, giving person that comes from water. Water flows, water gives life, it irrigates. A passionate person, passion, that's fire. It's a bit different to loving. Loving is somebody who's very giving. Passionate means somebody who's excitable and who's expressive in their love. You can be loving without being so expressive of it. That will be coming from fire. So they're positive and they're negative. Every single trait has its source. It's not like fire is bad or good. It's not like water is bad or good. Each one has the potential to be used for the positive or the negative, but every one of our traits will trace to one of those 4 character traits. So which trait would anger be? Which element would anger fall under?
Destructive burns.
Anger has got to be fire. We burn with rage when we're angry. We feel it. When you're angry, you heat up. Heated. You get heated. A heated discussion can border on anger. Just like a fire rages, so too anger rages. Just like with a fire, you could light a little fire, and that can very quickly burn out of control into a big fire. So too, when we're angry, we might be just a little bit angry, but that little bit angry can easily explode into major anger very quickly. And just like a fire can destroy everything completely, indiscriminately, so anger does the same. That fire doesn't stop and say, well, I'll burn this person's house down, but not this person. I'll burn this empty space, but not this inhabited area. This deserves to be burned and this doesn't. The fire doesn't. Once the fire's raging, then nobody's spared. And so too with the fire of anger, that when we get angry, it started off with a justification. We felt very strongly that we should be angry at this time because you've done something that upsets me, that angers me. But very quickly, that fire spreads way beyond what you justified your anger for and ends up hurting everybody around you. You lose your judgment, you lose your ability to discern, your self-control. It's out of control. This is the nature of anger. And this is what we're going to explore a little bit this evening. The Kabbalah of anger. The Rabbi Chaim Vital identified as being coming from the element of fire in our soul, which sounds pretty dangerous, as indeed it is. Interestingly, when he identifies fire as being sourced in, the anger being sourced in fire, Rabbi Chaim Vital says there's another trait that's also sourced in fire, and that is arrogance. Arrogance is also a fire attribute, because just like fire lifts itself up, that's what arrogance does. It makes us bigger. We spread like a fire when we're arrogant. And the fact that the two, arrogance and anger, are both sourced in fire, indicates that they are actually intertwined, that they're connected to each other. Because I can only really get angry in the first place if I have some arrogance. That's right. That what am I angry at in the first place? I'm angry because you have stepped on my toes. You have done something that I don't want. That I thought that I control everything, and you've done something that indicates that you're not under my control. And so therefore I'm furious. This is what gets us angry. And that is just arrogance. The thought that we control things, that we're the one who calls the shots, that's just arrogance. Since when are you the one who calls the shots? So my initial response, my angry response, was because of my arrogance. And so anger and arrogance are both fire. Once you light it, then you do lose control. So it seems from this and from many statements of the Kabbalists and the great sages that anger is something to stay away from to the extreme, because it is a volatile, dangerous, damaging, and extremely powerful attribute that we don't want to be involved in.
So extreme stay away from, or stay away from the extreme?
Well, that's the question. Is there any use for anger? Is there any place where anger is appropriate? Is there any time when it's the right thing and you should be angry? And if so, when? And how? How should we utilize this anger in a productive, positive, and safe way? Is that possible? Well, it would seem if anger is fire,
And fire is
so fire is...
transferring one state of energy into another energy. So it produces energy. So energy
Right.
is good.
Yeah, and fire is extremely useful and very good, and something that we would expect, we would want to use. Yes, you have to be careful when you use fire, but it seems to have a positive use. So the question is how to use anger, when to use anger, and what is its positive purpose. So if we look at the statements of the Kabbalists on the topic of anger, we see a bit of dichotomy and some seemingly contradictory statements. On the one hand, the Holy Zohar, one of the most primary Kabbalistic sources, does say that anger is an extremely dangerous thing. In the words of the Zohar, when somebody gets angry, their soul leaves them, their holy soul departs from them, and in its place comes in an evil spirit. So when you are in a state of anger, it's like your good self has been hijacked and you've been possessed by an evil spirit. You're not in your own skin at that moment. And that is extremely dangerous. We know from the Kabbalistic writings, in fact, that same Shara Kedusha from Rabbi Chaim Vital speaks at length, and the book of Tanya expands on the idea that we have two sides of our personality, two souls, two distinct souls. We have a divine, holy soul, and we have an animalistic, negative, lowly soul. The divine soul leaves us when we're angry. It can't be present. It's like we've banished the good voice in us. We've banished it in a state of anger. And in its place, a negative spirit comes in. And we're temporarily possessed. Which is, I guess, an experience we can all testify to. That when we do feel anger, that there is a certain moment where we are not ourselves and we do and say things that we can't believe we're doing. And even as we're doing it, we can't believe that it's me. But at the same time, we can't seem to not do it. There's a point of loss of control when we're angry, where we can't help ourselves. And we will say and do things that even as we do it, we know they're wrong, but it's like we're being pushed. This, the Zohar says, is you're being possessed by an evil spirit. You've vacated, your soul has vacated you because you entered into the anger When you enter into that realm, you banish your soul and you invite a negative spirit into you. So you're responsible for what you do, even though you can't control yourself, because you started that ball rolling. But to some extent, there is a point where you actually cannot control yourself. You're still responsible for it because you got yourself into it, but look out. And so this, the Zohar puts into very graphic words, is being possessed by Ruach Ra. The word is a negative spirit. This, the Zohar connects to a Talmudic teaching that says that anybody who gets angry, at that time when you get angry, it's like you are an idol worshipper. You're worshipping idols. You're worshipping a foreign god. You're denying the existence of God. You're accepting upon yourself a foreign god, an idol. Now we know idolatry is taken very seriously in Torah as being the absolute uprooting of the divine message of God and morality. Creating an idol means creating something outside of God. And the Talmud says that one who gets angry, has rejected God, is worshipping an idol at that moment. The Zohar explains that as meaning that because you've banished the holy soul that you had within you, your divine image, you've pushed that away, and you've invited a negative spirit inside of you, it's like you've taken on another God. Because God is one with the depth of our soul. Our holiness of our soul is synonymous with God. When you get angry, you negate your holy self and you've invited another negative self in. You've pledged allegiance to a foreign god. Your soul is now under the control of a negative entity. And so, therefore, it's like worshipping an idol. So, that's pretty serious. This idea of worshipping an idol is further elaborated upon and explained in the book of Tanya by Rabbi Shnei Zalman, the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad, where he says that why is it like worshipping an idol when you're angry? Because if we go back and look at the cause of your anger, what made you angry? Now, we can think of many examples of things that make us angry. And some of them are big deals. Some of them don't seem to be such a big deal, but they get us angry. We get angry when we're mistreated. So it could be at work, let's say, and you've worked very hard on a project, and somebody else comes along and takes credit for it. They did nothing, you did everything, and they get all the credit and they get all the accolades, and you're left as if you didn't do anything. That would make somebody angry. And that would be quite a justified, you've got a good reason to be angry there. We would get angry, many people would get angry at such a thing. We get angry when we're trying to park. We've been looking for parking for the last 15 minutes. We finally found a spot, and as we're about to reverse in, somebody slips in behind us and takes the spot. You had indicated you were obviously going into there, and somebody slipped in and took the spot right from under your nose. We get angry at that. Again, justified. Somebody has wrongly taken something of mine. It is justified. We get angry when somebody honks at us. Well, what's the rush? What am I doing wrong? And somebody's honking behind for no reason, or maybe for a reason. But why do you have to honk? I mean, on my wedding, I'm going, I'm moving, and they honk at you. We get angry, or we get angry when we're honking at somebody, that they're blocking the way. In the middle, no indicator, nothing, just stopped in the middle of the road, and we start honking. We get angry, and our blood can boil. We get angry when people in our family don't do what we wanted them to do. So we get angry at our kids because how many times do I have to tell you that you have to hang your jacket up on the hook so you'll know where it is in the morning. And instead of looking for it and finding it, that it's behind the couch. So I'm angry at that. And I'll express my anger. We get angry when our spouse or our loved one or our partner in life, we asked them to do something and they didn't do it. And we were very clear. We asked very clearly, please, what I want you to do is to empty the dishwasher. I asked you a simple task. Why couldn't you do it? And it's still not done. We get angry when we were asked to do something, but it wasn't something that we were able to do, and it was too much, and we've been too much demands on us. You know that I'm busy. How am I supposed to do that? I don't have time for this. Why would you ask me this again and again? And so on and so forth. I'm sure we can find many examples of things, big and little, that we get angry with. But why do we get angry? Why, in all of those cases, why are we angry about it? If we actually would not be in the moment, because when you're in the moment you can't analyze, but now we're sitting here, hopefully none of us are particularly angry right now. So why are we angry at those things? Let's take them the most impersonal one of somebody taking our parking spot. Let's not talk about people close to us. Let's talk about a stranger. So someone takes our parking spot. Why are we angry? What's the justification there to get angry? And to stare at the person and talk about it later. And why are we angry? Can you explain?
It's an injustice.
Injustice. Yep. What's the injustice?
That fairness, the situation didn't play out, and somebody got something that they shouldn't have.
Right. So it was my spot. Somebody else took it. That's not fair. So the injustice, the unfairness makes us angry. Why angry?
Seems to be the only means to express the
Because it's
disappointment.
down to me.
Right. There's something has happened to me. I mean, you could, if you saw it happen, if you were just sitting on the footpath and you saw somebody about to park and somebody else go in, would you feel angry?
No.
Not really. I mean, you'd say that's not nice. Yeah, but probably there wouldn't be the same emotional reaction. It's the same injustice, but it wasn't to me. So it's not purely the injustice, it's not purely the unfairness, it's that I was treated unfairly.
And I can't help it.
Right. There's nothing much I can do. I can't. I mean, what, I'm going to go to the police. What am I going to do? Write a letter to the council? What am I going to do now? Smash the guy's windows? Maybe would that help? Maybe. So what am I doing when I've got this experience? It's hit me. I need to react. I need to process it, and I can't. So it has to come out. It comes out as anger, as frustration, gritting my teeth, shouting something profane, maybe, banging my hand on the wall. Or maybe being in a bad mood and letting it out on other people but I've got this thing in me that I'm now angry. And if somebody asks me why am I angry, I'll tell you why I'm angry. You know what happened? And you've got a story to say why you're angry.
It's not good to repeat it because it comes back. It's like a repetition of anger.
So if you tell the story, you get even more angry about it. It increases. So that's true of something as, I mean, for some people this it's not petty, but losing a car spot in the scheme of life, even in Bondi, we survive that. We can survive that. It's not the worst thing. Some of the other examples at work, maybe even more frustrating and more angry we'd get from such a thing. In our relationships, even more. But in the end, it's all the same thing. It's based on the same thing. I have experienced something that I don't like, I feel is wrong. I feel like it should not have happened. It didn't come out the way I had planned it to be, and I think it should. And therefore, I need to react with this anger. This is the way I boil it over. And if I talk about it, I'll get more angry. If I don't talk about it, it'll simmer inside and eventually dissipate. We've got over the car spots that we missed out on. We've got over the comments that we didn't like or the things that weren't done for us, but they're there somewhere. And in the meantime, it's burnt up something inside us.
But sometimes it's not always to do with the self. Like, say, for example, watching news and something horrible happened, and they start talking about the background story.
Mm-hmm.
And like, for example, this guy who had, I remember we had this siege, and he should have been in jail and kicked out of the country, whatever.
Right.
But somebody didn't do, and
Mm-hmm.
it ended up in
Yeah.
what it ended up. So
Mm-hmm.
of course it makes you angry.
Yeah, sure. And it's interesting with the news, which pieces of news make us angry and which don't. Because if you think about it, there's plenty out there to get us angry. In fact, the news is made to get us angry.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
The whole point, it's not there to say, for us to feel comfortable. It's bad news. The whole thing is to tell us bad news to get us frustrated and angry, but we don't get angry about everything, at least not demonstrably angry about every single story. The ones we will get angry about are the ones that we relate to, that are a bit closer to home. That if I don't identify with any of the players in the story, so then it's interesting, but it doesn't hit me emotionally. Whereas if I identify with the victim of a story, or if I think I could also be in that position, that could happen to me, then I'm involved and I'll respond. So in Tanya, it teaches that the reason we're angry is because we have decided that this should not happen to me. It's wrong that it happened to me. And that assumption gives us this indignation that we want to fight through anger. But the assumption is wrong. The assumption that this should not have happened to me is wrong. That's the mistake. Because there's nothing that should not have happened. When something happens, that is the divine plan. There's no such thing as something that should not have happened. After it's happened, that's what should have happened. Doesn't mean that it's a good thing that happened, at least on the surface or immediately. Doesn't mean it's something that we would choose to happen, but if it's happened, then it's supposed to happen. And our feeling that it should not have happened is false, because we're mixing up our roles. We are people, and we are players in the world. We can decide what we do. We can decide how we react. We cannot decide what happens to us. That is not our role. God decides what happens. We decide what we do about it, how we respond to it. So when I think that I'm deciding what should happen, then I'm annoyed that this is not my plan. This is not how I wanted things to happen. So I'm annoyed. But if I think that, no, God decides what happens, I decide how to react to that. So then anger is not the appropriate response. It actually doesn't make sense anymore. Let's go back to the example. So I was planning to park here. I had my indicator on, I was ready to park, and somebody else slipped in there. So my instinctive reaction is, that was my spot. I decided to park there. You were not supposed to park there, and you've taken it from me. That's our instinctive reaction. That is taking God out of the picture. That's making you the God who's deciding what should happen, and now it didn't happen like you planned. But you're not the planner. God is the planner. God planned that somebody else was supposed to park there, not you. That was not your parking spot. I was not supposed to be there. Why? I don't know. Is that guy going to get his tires slashed because he parked there? Is it because now when I park somewhere else, another opportunity is going to happen? Maybe, and maybe not. And maybe you'll never know, and maybe you'll never see. We have no idea. But you weren't supposed to park there. So, by me saying that was my spot and you took it from me, I'm making myself God. I'm saying that I'm deciding what should be, and I'm banishing God from the picture. That's idolatry. That's setting yourself up as an idol. The anger means that you thought you have control. Whereas if you are a believer means that what happens is supposed to happen. And so I was not supposed to park there. He was. And that is for my good. I'm where I'm supposed to be. Now, does that mean he did the right thing? The guy who snuck into the parking spot. He saw you about to park there, and he snuck in there. Did he do the right thing? No, how can we say he didn't? Isn't that what God wanted?
It's about free choice as well.
So, you have your relationship with God, he has his relationship with God. Your relationship at the moment, God is telling you, this is not your parking spot. The fact that that guy immorally took your parking spot in an unethical way, in his relationship with God, he's answerable. He's done the wrong thing. And in his relationship with you, he's done the wrong thing. But you were not supposed to park there. And whether it was because this guy came and took the parking spot, or it would be because you tried to park and you didn't fit, so you had to go somewhere else, or whatever means, you were not going to park there. It was not going to happen. It was never going to happen. The fact that that person did something unethical to stop you parking there, that's their problem, and they're going to be answerable for that. They owe you an apology. But that's not your issue, that's their issue. So if I would go through that thought process as I'm driving off, I lost the spot, I couldn't be angry. It's not possible to be angry. It wouldn't make any sense to be angry. I should be angry at somebody who took the spot that wasn't for me anyway, that I wasn't supposed to be in. Why should I be angry at him? I can be disapproving of his behavior. It's not a nice thing to do. I wouldn't want to do that. I can internalize that I should be careful never to do that to anybody, because it's the wrong thing to do. But to be angry actually makes no sense. Angry at what? He's got a problem. He's got an issue. But that's not my issue. So when it comes to a parking spot, okay, we could probably train ourselves to respond that way. When it comes to some more confronting situations, this may be a bit more difficult, a bit more challenging to do that. In the other example of the person who took credit for the work that you did, here's a work colleague. Maybe they did something. Or maybe it's just your superior who's going to their superior and showing all the work that you did and giving you no credit and taking all the credit. Again, why am I angry? The injustice. It's not fair. I put in the work and I get nothing from it. But hang on a second. Who is in control here? Is it that things should happen the way I expect and want? Or is it that God has a plan? He has a way things are supposed to happen. The same thing. It's the exact same as the parking spot. I was not supposed to get that credit. I was not supposed to gain in that way that I thought I was from this. And that was God's plan. Did that person do the right thing? No. Should I do something about it? Maybe. Maybe I should. Maybe I should speak to them and say, it really wasn't very nice what you just did. The guy who took the parking spot, okay, I've got to move on. But this person I have to work with. So maybe I should speak to them about it. Confront them. Maybe I should go to the superior over them. Whatever it is, whatever the situation. But that should be thought through very rationally, cool and calm. What should my response be? The angry reaction of kicking and screaming, where's that coming from? That's idolatrous. That's denying that God is in control, that this is what's supposed to happen. Now, what's my reaction to it? What's my appropriate reaction? It may be to be indignant. It may be to stand up for myself and my rights. That's fine. But to seethe in anger about it, what for? Now, I might say, well, hang on a minute. If I don't get credit for the work that I've done, so then I'm not going to advance in my career the way that I should, the way I deserve. I've done good work that should be recognized, and I should be promoted or get a raise, or I should be recognized for what I've done. If not, so then how am I going to advance in my career? This person is blocking my path. Same thing. What path? Whose path? Who makes the path? There's a divine path. God has made a path for you. You have to make your effort. You have to be responsible. You have to put the work in. And then the path will open up. And if there are blockages in your path, you may have to overcome those blockages. You may have to fight it. You may have to stand up for yourself. But to get angry that I missed out on something, no, you didn't. Maybe the whole point is for you to stand up for yourself and fight for it, and that will be recognized even more than the work that wasn't recognized. Maybe that's why. Or maybe this whole thing is happening so you should get frustrated with this job, go elsewhere, and that's where your success will come. Or maybe not. Maybe you'll never know or never see why. But this is your path. What has happened is your path. There's no such thing as something that has detoured you from your path. Everything that happens is taking you on your path. That is your path. This is the divine path for you. So our anger comes from the feeling that I was supposed to be here and I'm over there. This was supposed to happen and that has happened. What do you mean supposed to? According to who? Who wrote the script? Who's deciding what should be? If you're deciding, then you're getting frustrated because it's not happening according to your plan. That's where your anger comes from. But you don't decide. God decides. Same thing again. The person who mistreated you has done wrong. And between them and God, they've got an issue. Between them and you, they've got an issue. But that's their issue. That's their part. That's their problem. Yours is, so how do I respond now? So the anger has no place. And when we get angry, we're serving an idol, which the Zohar says we're expelling our divine soul and inviting a negative spirit into us, which the Tanya explains that we're denying God's existence and we're making ourselves into God. We're deciding what it's supposed to be. Either way, the anger has no place.
What if we're angry with ourselves?
Okay, so there we really have the same calculation. Why am I angry at myself? Because this is what I've done or haven't done. Now there, you can't say, well, that's somebody else's problem, that's my problem. I've done it. I've made bad choices. What if I was the one who stole the car spot? And I go home at night and realize what I've done. Or what if I'm the superior who took credit?
Angry then, you would feel guilty. But angry with yourself is an example. Say, for example, I have an appointment at, 3 o'clock. And I have a bit of extra time. So instead of getting ready and go, I procrastinate and then next thing, I'm running late, I'm not ready, I'm not prepared,
right.
And I'm like really running late, and I'm very angry with myself. Why
Right.
did I waste
Why
my
did I do
time?
that? Why did this? So it regrets. We're angry with ourselves because of regrets. It's actually the same thing. Our free choice only applies to what we're about to do, not what we did. When we're about to do something, we have free choice. Once it's done, that is what God wanted. And what I need to do now is decide what's my response. It's actually just like what somebody else does, is what we did. The only difference is I'm responsible for what I did, so I now need to decide what's my response. Getting angry about it is still the same thing. It's still saying that there's no God. Even the wrongdoings that I've done, even if I was the one who didn't just procrastinate, but I took somebody else's car spot, or I took credit for somebody else's thing, or I have hurt somebody I love by saying the wrong thing. I made the mistake, and I know that it's me, and I'm not blaming anyone else. Even there, to get angry at yourself, to be angry, what's the point of that? You need to be disappointed. You need to be indignant about it. You need to say, this needs to change. You need to feel a sense of remorse, but remorse not about the past, about, so now what do I have to do? How do I fix this? How do I change it?
Why get angry when you can get evil?
Mm-hmm. With yourself.
And once you've done it, you say it's God's choice.
No, but before you're still responsible, and even after you're responsible, you can't excuse yourself. That's the thing. The guy that took your car spot can't roll down the window and say, God wanted me here, not you. He can't say that, even though it's true. But he got there through his bad choice of doing the wrong thing. So he needs to fix that. He's got now a blemish on his soul that needs to be fixed. So you can't excuse your bad behavior by, well, this is what God wants. You choose that, and you're responsible for it. But retroactively, this is where I'm supposed to be now, and now I've got to choose what's next. I've got to choose what's my response. How do I fix this? How do I make it better? And how do I move forward in a positive way? So, based on this, anger has no place. It has no use. That's what it seems, at least so far. But there's another interesting Zohar teaching that says that there is an anger that is good down here in this world, and it's accepted up in heaven. And there's an anger that is bad down here, and it's bad in heaven. So says the Zohar. There is an anger that is the right thing down here, and in heaven it's approved of. Not all anger is bad. So while on the one hand the Zohar makes it clear how terrible anger is and how dangerous it is, there is a little nod to the possibility that anger does have a place. There's a positive anger. And we do find that there were some very righteous and holy people who seemed to get angry. There's a story of Rabbi Baruch of Mezhebuzh. Rabbi Baruch of Mezhebuzh was the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement. And he was a very holy man and a very colorful character. And they say about him that he used to get angry and display anger. And people knew that at those times you just stayed away. Like, for example, once one of his assistants came into his study and started lighting candles for him. He brought some candles. Back then it was before electricity. We're talking about 250 years ago. So he started lighting candles in the room. And Rabbi Baruch said to this shamas, this assistant in the shul, "What, tiny candles? That's all you could find? You couldn't find big candles? Well, you want us to just be in the dark? You're just lighting tiny little candles?" And he started getting angry at him. So this assistant was used to that, sort of, that the Rabbi Baruch does this every now and then. So he went and got big candles, and he came back and he started lighting big candles in the room. And Rabbi Baruch said to him, "You need to waste so much money on huge candles? That's all you can find? There's so much wax you have to waste?" He started shouting at him about the big candles. So the assistant said, "So the small candles were too small. The big candles are no good. So what would you like? What should I do? What option are you leaving me?" And Rabbi said, "Doesn't matter. Whatever you did would be the same. I'd be angry anyway." And this is, Rabbi Baruch of Mezhebuzh is known as a very holy man. On another occasion, just to prove how holy he was, this story illustrates it. He was in one of these moods, and one of his very close students had come in to speak to him and received a very angry response. So he knew that at that time, he needs to just back out and sort of leave. As he's leaving, he sees somebody else is coming to see Rabbi Baruch, and this person is a stranger, hasn't been there before. Now, when you're a student of his and you know that this anger has some holy reason, we're not talking about a normal person getting angry, we're talking about a holy man getting angry. There must be something he's doing with this anger. There must be something special. But if you don't know him and you walk in, you're not expecting that. So this stranger was coming to seek blessing or advice from Rabbi Baruch. So Rabbi, who was the student, saw him and said, "Now's not such a good time. Maybe come back another time and see him." And he said, No, I need to come. I've traveled all the way from Israel and to come and see Rabbi Baruch. He's in Mezhebuzh in Ukraine. So this Rabbi, the student of Baruch, knew that Rabbi Baruch of Mezhebuzh had a particular thing that he very much was against people from Israel leaving the Holy Land. Because it's the Holy Land, he didn't believe that people should leave. And so for this guy, a stranger, to walk into Rabbi Baruch and say, "Hi, I'm here from Israel," when Rabbi Baruch is in one of his angry moods, and he's saying, "I'm here from Israel," he said, no, please, don't go in. He says, "No, it's fine, I really need to see him." So he's trying to stop him. Anyway, so he goes in, and seems like he was welcomed, and there was quite a nice conversation. Rabbi was outside, he couldn't hear anything, but that itself was a sign, if he couldn't hear anything, that things must be quite calm in there. Eventually the visitor leaves, walks out, and Rabbi Baruch turns to Rabbi, his student, and said, "Did you see the guy from Israel?" He said, "Yeah, I saw him." He said, "You know who he was?" He said, "No." He said, "Eliyahu Hanavi. That was Elijah the prophet." We know that Elijah the prophet appears in human form to visit very holy people. So the visitor from Israel was Elijah the prophet himself. And Rabbi, the student, said, "So this is what's going on when he's angry. He's getting visited by Elijah the prophet. To get a visit from Elijah the prophet, you have to be on the highest level of holiness and of righteousness. It doesn't happen to me, but it happened to Rabbi Baruch when he's angry. So it was understood that this anger is not such normal anger. There's something to this anger. And I think to understand what this holy anger is, it's through another story of another great holy man, Rabbi Chaim Halberstam, the Divrei Chaim of Sanz. He was a couple of generations later, after Baruch. And Rabbi Chaim of Sanz, the Sanz thereof he was known as, was an extremely holy man, a great Torah scholar, and a very charismatic and powerful leader. And people knew that if you wanted to get a blessing from him, his blessings had power. And he had miraculous power. But if you wanted a real blessing, if somebody really deeply needed an urgent blessing, the greatest blessing you could get from him was to be told off by him. If you went to speak to him and he cursed you out, that was the best blessing. Because there's a teaching from Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhensk, one of the earlier teachers of the Hasidic scholarship, and Reb Nachman of Breslov says a similar thing, great-grandson of Baal Shem Tov, that when a righteous person gets angry at you, it sweetens any negative judgment against you. If there's a cloud blocking your flow of blessing coming down, for whatever reason, there's something you need that is not coming down. You're not receiving a blessing that you need. When a righteous person gets angry at you, that anger breaks through that cloud and allows sweetness and goodness to come down. And so Rabbi Chaim and Sanz, everyone knew that if he got angry at you, you're in. It's the best. If he shouted at you, then whatever blessing you need will come. And the best thing would be if he whacked you with his stick. He had a stick that he held. If he gives you a whack, then that's the best possible blessing. I'm not talking about a violent whack, but like a whack with, get out of here. That was the best blessing possible. There was a certain person who had been married several years, had not yet been blessed with children, and had gone to all the medical possibilities at the time, which were not much, and had gone to several great rabbis for advice and blessing, and nothing had happened. And eventually somebody said, if you want this blessing, there's only one way you're going to get it. And that's if Rabbi Chaim of Sanz gets angry at you. Then you can be blessed. There's a blockage coming down. You're not being blessed with children. You need him to get angry at you. Go to Rabbi Chaim of Sanz. So he traveled to the village of Sanz where he lived, and there was always a line to go in and receive blessings. And everyone was hoping in the line to get told off. And so as he's waiting in the line, and he's here, there are some people ahead who are getting shouted at, some people not, some are getting, it varies. And he's waiting for his turn. He eventually comes before Rabbi Chaim of Sanz, and the tradition was that on a little piece of paper you write your name, your mother's name, and the blessing that you're asking for, and you give it to the tzaddik, called a kvittel in Yiddish, a little piece of paper. He gave it, and Rabbi Chaim looked at it, looked up to him with a big smile, and said, I bless you with much success. All the best. So the guy walks out, so disappointed, like blessing of success with a big smile, like that's not what I came for. Like I didn't get told off. It's a blessing, but that's not what he's looking for. So he thinks, what should I do? He decides, you know what? I'm going to go back in the line and go again. That'll really annoy him. He I can't waste time. He's giving out blessings. There's a big line. I'm going to go again. Bit of chutzpah. That'll work. So he goes again, waits in the line, takes a couple hours, gets in with the same blessing. He asks for the same thing. Reb Chaim looks up to him again with a warm smile. I wish you much, much success. Didn't work. So he goes out and he sees one of the assistants of Rabbi Chaim, one of his assistants, and he says to him, I need the Rebbe to get angry at me. What can I do? I mean, I don't know. We can't control, He does what he does. So now, come on, you must have some ideas. So, and the guy says, he tries to give him a bit of money, like, I'm sure, you can work out something for me. So the guy says, okay, let me give you a couple of things. So he gives this man the cup that Rabbi Chaim would always drink his tea from. There was a special cup. I don't know if it was the one. I know that Rabbi Chaim had a gold cup that came from one of his ancestors. I don't know if it was that one. But there was a special cup that he would drink his tea from. And so the assistant said, here, take it. And he gave him his walking stick. The walking stick that he would sometimes whack people with. He said he gave that to him as well. So later on, Rabbi Chaim asked for a cup of tea. And the assistant brought the cup, but not his cup, but like another cup. Rabbi Chaim said, where's my cup? This was a special cup. It had a very holy tradition to it, and he wanted his cup. And the assistant said, that guy? And he described the guy. I think he took it. And Chaim said, okay, I don't need that cup. I can have a different cup. What's the big deal which cup I drink from? It's the same thing. Didn't get angry. So he drank his tea. Anyway, later, at the end of the day, he was ready to go home. And he went, put on his coat, he's put on his hat, looks for his stick. He said, my stick, where's my stick? He would always walk with a stick. And this was the custom of many righteous tzaddikim. They would always walk with a stick, even if they didn't need a walking stick. It was a thing of dignity, of honor in previous generations to walk with a walking stick, with a silver top. Where's my stick? So the assistant said, that guy who's coming here, he was annoying you. I think he took your stick. So Reb Chaim said, I can walk without a stick. I don't need a stick. And he's just not getting angry. So anyway, he left, and the guy is so disappointed. The assistant says, I can't. What can I say? I mean, his cup, his stick, nothing's bothering him today. So he's so disappointed. I just want him to shout at me once, just scream at me a little bit, get a bit angry. He's nothing. So he goes to the shul, this man, and he just sits down on a bench. He starts crying, and he says, Hashem, please God, I've prayed for so many years. I've sought so many blessings. I've tried to do so many good deeds. All I need is the tzaddik, Rabbi Chaim, to get angry at me once, and nothing's doing. Anyway, there's a bit of a commotion outside because suddenly Rabbi Chaim had to leave town. He had to go on a very important mission all of a sudden. So he saw that Rabbi Chaim's carriage with horse-drawn buggy was ready for him outside of his house. He needed to go somewhere. So the man ran, and as Rabbi Chaim's walking towards the buggy, he lies at the entrance, at the foot of the buggy, and he says, I'm not letting you into this buggy until you guarantee me that I will have children. He says to Rabbi Chaim. And Rabbi Chaim looks at him, and his face goes red. And he says, if you think that you can make me angry, you have no idea. You can't make me angry, and nobody can make me angry, and I've never been angry my entire life. When the man heard this, he had a big smile. And he said, thank you, Rebbe, thank you. And he left. Of course, it goes without saying that his wife was pregnant soon after that, and they were blessed with children. And so the students of Rabbi Chaim, who observed and watched carefully his actions, they said, we got an insight into what's going on here. We don't really know. People on this level, we don't really know how they're operating. But we have a little bit of a little inkling of something going on here. That Rabbi Chaim's anger was to clear the air of negativity. That's what it was. If a cloud was over somebody, So his righteousness, when a righteous person gets angry, there's no ego there. You're not angry. He's not angry about himself. The anger clears the negativity and opens a path and allows the blessing to come down. Sometimes there are big blockages. So a normal blessing, sometimes a righteous person can give a blessing without getting angry. But when there's a big blockage, so there needs to be something to pierce that blockage, so there needs to be this righteous anger. But in this case, the blockages were so big that Rabbi Chaim saw that just getting angry is not going to work. He couldn't find a way in heaven, a pathway in heaven to get through these blockages and sweeten the judgments and bring down the blessing. Every time the guy tried to make him angry, he couldn't get angry. There was nothing there. There was no basis. It was too hard. There was too much blockage. Until Rabbi Chaim figured an ingenious way to slip in the anger. The anger was that I don't get angry, and you're not going to get me angry. And he found, and that was able to slip a pathway through the blockage in heaven and invite down the blessing. And what they saw was that Rabbi Chaim testified about himself, and he meant it. You can't get me angry, and no one can get me angry, and I've never been angry in my life. What did he mean by that? How can you angrily say that I've never been angry? How can this righteous anger be effective if he's never been angry? How do people go to him for an angry blessing to clear the air if he says, I've never angry? What does it mean? In the Talmud, there was a Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi said a statement that I have never allowed anger to enter the walls of my house. I've never allowed anger to enter the walls of my house, which on a simple level what he means is that I don't get angry at home. I never allow anger at my home. But what does that mean? He gets angry everywhere else? He lets it out on people outside of the home? True, most people do the other way around. They get frustrated out of the home and they let it out in the home. He said, no, I'd never let anger come into the walls of my house. But what does he mean, just the walls of his house, and outside he is angry? So the Baal Shem Tov explained what he meant was, metaphorically, the walls of his house meant he never let anger be internalized inside of him. He would sometimes display anger externally, on his face or in his words, but he never allowed anger to be in his heart, in the walls of his house, meaning within himself. Internal anger he didn't allow. Rabbi Yossi was saying that there is a place sometimes to display anger, but there's never a place to feel it deeply. Rabbi Chaim of Sanz understood that he could cleanse people's pathways, he could open up the blockages through displaying anger, but he never was angry. Nothing could get him angry, and he never was angry. He could display anger, but never be it, never actually experience it internally. And Rabbi Yossi in the Talmud was saying the same thing, that sometimes you do need to be angry externally, but not internally. Internal anger is a fire that I've lost control of, a rage that I cannot stop. It'll burn up, whatever. It's completely indiscriminate in what it'll destroy. I've lost my holiness and I've been possessed by a negative, evil spirit. I'm forgetting about God and thinking I'm in control. That's internal anger, and that has no place. External anger does sometimes have a place. Sometimes you need to show anger. When in all of those examples, whether it be the parking spot you lost, or the credit you didn't get at work, or the dispute that you're having in your home, in all of those cases, it'll sometimes be appropriate to show a anger without feeling it. Because sometimes we need to shake things up. We need the heat of anger will allow things to change. When I display my upset at something, my indignation, that I think this is wrong, sometimes doing that with an angry tone that is controlled will be very effective. If I'm out of control, it'll not be effective for anybody. But if it's controlled, it could be. In disciplining children, for example, we remember our teachers that were strict. The ones who laid down the law. We remember also our parents when they got angry at us. And we always knew the difference between them being angry because they are angry or being angry because we needed to be told something. We always know the difference. When a child is being told off because the parent is tired or is busy with something else and being disturbed by them or just can't be bothered, the child knows that, and that anger is not effective, and it doesn't do its job. On the contrary, it just causes resentment. But when a parent is controlled and calculated in their anger, it's not a reaction, not a response, but it is a firm, angry face, angry voice, but totally in control. And it's all for the good of the recipient, that the child should be disciplined and hear, this is serious what you just did. That is extremely effective and will only have positive results because it's thought out and controlled. I didn't let anger into the walls of my home. Internally, it's an external expression. And that will be effective also in a workplace situation where you need to show you're angry. Sometimes when you say things too politely, without any emotion, they're not taken as seriously. When you say something with emotion, it heats up the situation, and heat allows change. You know, when you want to bend metal, you have to heat it up. When it's hot, you can bend it. When it's cold, it doesn't. So too with many situations, when certain patterns have become entrenched in people's behavior, they'll stay that way unless you heat things up. There needs to be a bit of confrontation. And sometimes you need to be angry. Whether you're speaking to somebody who works for you or speaking to someone who you work for, either way, sometimes you need to get passionate and angry, but that anger has to be totally controlled. Not inside the walls of your home. It's an expression of anger, calculated and controlled. So, when the Zohar says there's a good anger and there's a bad anger, there's an anger that can be controlled, and there's an anger that is out of control. There's an anger that is approved in heaven, and there's an anger that is terrible. There's the anger of Rabbi Chaim and Rabbi Baruch of Mezhebush, and Rabbi Yossi of the Talmud. And then there's the anger where we express our own disappointment that things didn't work out the way we decided they should. They're two different worlds. The Rebbe once advised somebody who was struggling with this issue of anger. How can I help it? How can I help control my anger? So this is the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He wrote a letter to somebody and he told them, I'll tell you one way to help it. If you apologize every time you get angry, make sure you apologize to the person afterwards. And make a habit. We sometimes get angry and say things that we didn't mean, or do things that we weren't supposed to. But go and apologize. Say, I'm sorry, I got angry, I lost control, and I apologize. To anyone. Apologize to your child, to your spouse, to a coworker, to the person who stole your parking spot. Apologize for getting angry. And by making a habit of that, you'll help your anger, because apologizing is really hard. It's very difficult to apologize. We don't like having to apologize. And when you know you're going to have to apologize, that will already help you maybe nip it in the bud and not allow yourself to get there. Because the Rebbe said that delaying is all you really need. The problem is with anger is that it's such a quick reaction that you get stuck in it and the big fire starts. But if you, just before you light that fire, if you just delay the response a little bit, so then you're much less likely to get angry. it's much easier to control it. So you need to put into your system a delay when you know these are the things that trigger my anger. So when I'm in that situation, I need to quickly walk away from it. I know that, and it's usually quite predictable. Most of us can predict, and we know the things that tick us off. And so we have to know that when I'm getting into that, I have to already hold myself slowly and walk away. So whether it be with kids getting ready for school in the morning, and that's when the frustrations happen, or if it's Friday afternoon, getting everything ready for Shabbos when things go wrong, or if it's at work at certain points when there's high tension, and that's when the anger comes. I know the times, and I can probably recognize them when I'm calm. I need to know that as soon as I'm edging towards that, I need to slow down. I might need to walk away, or the old count to 10, or whatever it be, to just slow down the response.
Sounds like a very similar response to any destructive emotion or feeling.
Yeah, always slowing down is better. And finally, the Rebbe says also, don't talk too much about it, because a fire needs air to grow. And when you talk about the anger, this made me angry, so then that actually breathes on the fire to make it bigger. Sometimes you might have somebody on the outside who you can express things to, but dwelling on the anger makes it grow into a bigger fire. So we need fire, we need warmth, we need heat, we need passion. We want to be passionate people, we don't want to be numb. But don't let the fire into your home, into your walls. Express it externally, and then it'll be a useful anger. Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.